Hello. In this particular session, we're going to learn how to prepare a delightful soup recipe. For this dish, we're going to prepare a mushroom consommé utilizing both mushrooms and chicken breast as our main ingredients. First, for the ingredients. To achieve tender chicken breast, I'll thoroughly cook and then grind it into a fine consistency. Afterward, I will then proceed to cook the shiitake mushrooms right on top of it. And so what we need to prepare is the chicken breast here and the shiitake mushrooms and the gelatin right here. We'll need these together. Following that, among the various tools you'll be using, it's absolutely crucial to have a brush ready. A brush will absolutely be necessary, and then since we'll also need to briefly blanch them later, as you can observe, you'll also need to have cold water readily prepared. First, I'm going to start by preparing the chicken breast. There isn't a great deal of preparation that's truly needed for the chicken breast itself. Since cooking a whole chicken breast takes a considerable amount of time, we'll cut it into smaller pieces and then cook it to accelerate the process. The fat is in here. I will proceed to cut up the chicken breast. Next, the other leg. Now I will start the blanching process. In order to properly cook the chicken breast, you must always have boiling water prepared and ready to use. I will now add the water. And because we'll need to prepare this item separately, I'm going to get another pot of water ready. Here we have a pot, and I'll proceed to fill it with water so we can bring it to a boil. As you can see, I've got 2 pots prepared here. One of them is. One pot will contain the water for cooking the chicken breast to heat it up, and the other pot will hold the water for blanching the shiitake mushrooms. Okay, while the water is boiling, I'll prepare the shiitake mushrooms. The most important thing when preparing mushrooms is that if they touch water, they lose their aroma. Because they lose their aroma, you should always use a brush to dust them off like this. Even if it looks clean, impurities come off when brushed. Alright, prepare the mushrooms like this. Next, to give the shiitake mushrooms their intended shape, I will carefully remove the stem portion. When you get skilled at removing the stems, you can use a large knife like this to take them off. But if you're not as experienced, you can use a small knife like this. You should do that, and for more delicate, precise and smaller cuts, you can use your hand to ensure that only the very tip of the knife blade goes in just a little bit. That way the knife won't go in too deep. To prevent the knife from going too deep into the mushroom, you can hold it firmly like this and proceed with your precise cuts. So the shiitake mushrooms are prepped. Now for the shiitake. We'll cut them diagonally, ensuring a wide surface area is presented when sliced this way.
Prepare the shiitake mushrooms like this.
For this work, a very sharp knife is essential, isn't it? That's why you must sharpen your knife meticulously. Later, during our in-person classes, if we have enough time, I'll be sure to provide you with a more detailed explanation of how to properly sharpen your knives. If you look online or in other places, you'll find various methods described for how to sharpen a knife, but if you adhere to those, your knife will rapidly become blunt, or as we often say, it will lose its edge very quickly. You've likely encountered them being damaged before, therefore I will also separately explain a method for sharpening knives that not only increases their strength but also ensures consistent, even pressure is applied. If you look right here, the water is already boiling, and into this boiling water, I'm going to cook the chicken breast. To truly master these techniques, it's always a good idea to have a strainer readily available, don't you think? And while the chicken breast is cooking over here, I'm going to blanch the shiitake mushrooms. The water hasn't come to a boil yet. What did I say was the most crucial aspect when blanching earlier? It's about cooking it lightly. I said you can think of it as pre-cooking, right? That's why it's always better to do it in boiling water. Following this, and given that we are currently preparing this as an exhibit without using salt, if you intend to cook it at a slightly higher temperature to ensure it's thoroughly done, incorporating a small amount of salt can certainly be an excellent approach. When you introduce substances such as sodium or various other minerals into pure water, its boiling point actually significantly increases. Because the boiling point increases, though we often talk about seasoning ingredients, it's also a highly effective method to raise the temperature significantly and cook at a high heat, either in conjunction with or as an alternative to seasoning. That's why this is something you should definitely remember as you learn the principles and science of cooking. In theory, we must have that knowledge beforehand to then be able to express it again through practical application. And you need to actually use it when cooking. The main reason you engage in theoretical studies is so that you can apply that knowledge in practical situations. When you're actively cooking and preparing food, it's crucial to grasp the exact underlying principles, and that's why these theory classes are essential for your understanding, as you can see. Alright, the chicken breast is still cooking and the water over here is boiling. Once it's boiled, we'll take the shiitake mushrooms. Shiitakes. Cook them once. Blanch them lightly, take them out, and put them in cold water. Currently, I don't have a proper strainer available, so I'll be utilizing a ladle for this step. However, when you perform this task, it would be highly recommended to use a strainer. So, like this. Quickly cool them in cold water. These shiitake mushrooms here. To effectively eliminate moisture, a vital aspect is to arrange the shiitake mushrooms exactly in the sequence they were originally cut and spread them out. When you're positioning the shiitake mushrooms, you should always keep in mind how you plan to use them in your dish. For what I'm preparing now, I want the darker brown side of the mushroom to be presented facing outwards, so I will arrange them with the brown side facing downwards in order to make sure that the lighter side will be what you see on the finished plate. Okay, I've prepared these shiitake mushrooms this way. To ensure that even more of their moisture is effectively removed, I'll gently press down on them from above to assist in the process. So I have prepared the shiitake mushrooms in this manner, and next the chicken breast. I will now take out the cooked chicken. I'll take the chicken breast out like this, and just like the mushrooms, I'll use paper towels to remove all the moisture from the chicken breast too. This will ensure it's completely dry before moving on to the next step. Okay, so I'll prepare these two things. You will need to finely grind the chicken breast and then prepare the gelatin so you can use it to completely encase the shiitake mushroom. This is a very essential and crucial step for the recipe. I add fresh cream to the chicken breast when I grind it. When I grind the sugar, I also add a little brandy or another type of alcohol. Of course, seasoning with something like thyme would pair quite nicely. Of course, I will also incorporate ingredients you are quite familiar with, such as pepper. To begin, by utilizing whipping cream, the consistency will become much finer, resulting in a significantly smoother outcome. You absolutely should not forget that this is possible. Now I'm going to prepare a chicken breast mousse, making use of the chicken breast. To put it simply, you can think of it as force meat, which is essentially ground meat. I cooked it beforehand to facilitate the grinding process. Since this dish is intended for a display hall, you can understand that it was cooked in a specific way to ensure it looks appealing and is easy to mold into an attractive presentation. Using chicken breast is perfectly fine. So I've taken the chicken breast that was already cooked and put it into the blender for processing. After putting it in the blender, we're going to blend it until it's smooth. If you add the whipping cream in right from the very beginning,